finalize this. We're going to record it. So this is just to bring you through, and anyone else joining in, this is to bring you through a couple of things that was talked about at this Lightning Week. So every year, the developer relations team in Salesforce has a week where it ends up being a month, where all the developer groups around the world, and Dublin, I organised one in Dublin. So we had a session last Tuesday night with a guy from Salesforce, Gavin Gannan, talking about the new Lightning parts of Salesforce. So it's a new branding that Salesforce has called Lightning, and they have brought in 4 new things for it. So I just flick this on. Never mind that. Okay, so the idea behind this was that we would do a bit of an overview, which I'm going to do very quickly, because what I want to do is I want to do this a few times. So I want to really look at Lightning components today, because Harry and Lorraine wanted to be on this call, and they'd be more interested in Lightning Connect. So we're going to talk Lightning components today. I'm going to make you a Lightning component from a tutorial, and then you guys can do it yourselves then in your own time to figure out how it works. But there's a lot of people developing on Salesforce right now, 1.9 million of them. And this was just a way of getting access to Lightning Week. So there's a link there I'll send on to you guys, but the tutorial is probably the most important part of it. So the idea behind Lightning is that they want us to create apps that, if you like, cover this app gap. So people want their apps to be mobile. And Salesforce's basic technology, the platform is fine. The basic technology behind making mobile applications is a little bit outdated. Salesforce 1 was fine, but it's when you try to make anything funky in it, it's using Visualforce, and Visualforce is 10 years old. It's an old technology, and apps are being built differently now. So Salesforce wanted to rejig what they do, so they've made a new framework. They're actually working on this for the last 4 years, and it was released in November, and now it's a bit more available. And it's going to be going GA, we think, in winter 16. So this is something we have to get up and running with, but it's good for developers to see what's going on. So traditional app development is just a little bit slow. Visualforce pages are fine, but it does take a while to write them. Connecting with other systems is also slow, and developer time is expensive. So they want to make life easier for everyone. So the overall platform is still the same hierarchy, except in the middle there, they have put in a lot of Lightning components and frameworks and builders in the middle that allow the apps that we would create, the sales and service and marketing apps that we all see, interact with the platform using APIs in an easier way. That's really what this is all about. And Lightning components is just one part of it. So when Salesforce talk about Lightning, they're talking about 4 things at the minute. This will increase. The first thing they want to talk about is Lightning Connect. And what Lightning Connect does is it allows you natively to integrate with another system. So let's take, for example, let's say WebSphere or even Lotus Notes with XPages. What happened was that Microsoft, a couple of years ago, created a protocol called OData. The current protocol OData is OData 2.0. There's a 3.0 being released, and in the summer there's going to be a 4.0. But it's all from Microsoft's new ads. You ever see the Formula One ads where they're going Microsoft in the cloud and everything is so fast? Well, the idea is they've made a protocol, and a number of the other big multinationals like Google and Salesforce have hopped on OData. So most databases out there, most of them, have plugins for OData. Now, classic Lotus Notes does not, but XPages does. WebSphere does. And there's a lot of others, whether that be SQL, whether that be Oracle, DB2, whatever. And when you plug an OData plugin onto your own database, so let's say Domino, what you're doing is you're surfacing it to the internet with a URL. And Salesforce can interact with that URL and create tables, or in our case, custom objects in Salesforce that, if you like, map to the tables in the external data source. And you can query data from Salesforce into other systems. So the data never leaves Domino, it never leaves DB2. You're just querying it in Salesforce like it was just there. And what I'll do is I'll set another webinar next week when Harry and Lorraine are around, just to show you how that works. The second bit was, well, this is Lightning Connect. The second bit was the process builder, which I brought you through in January. It's a bit better now, but it's improving all the time. So we might revisit that as well. But what I want to get into is the component framework, okay, and how Lightning components work. And if you're following along with frameworks right now, all the big players are making new types of frameworks in the last year or two that componentize their code. A good example is Google. Google have a framework called AngularJS, which is very good for making single page applications with routing and all the rest of it in it. It's quite very good. But the problem with it, and Facebook found the same thing, and so did Twitter, that if you're creating big applications, you're almost afraid to change anything because everything is interrelated. And if you want to make a type of functionality for different applications, you have to recreate it again all over again. And they decided this was bad. It's hard to manage their apps. So instead of doing that, they're making small little components. Let's take a search field or a navigator menu or something like that, and creating it as its own standalone component that you can drag and drop anywhere as long as the other parts of the page are listening for it. And that's the idea behind Polymer, React, etc. Okay, so Salesforce, what happened was Salesforce created their own framework like this about 4 years ago. They called it Aura, A-U-R-A. And they open sourced it and released it to the wild 2 years ago as Aura. And what they've done since is they've embedded Aura into the platform. So we can use these Aura components into a framework that is called Lightning Components. That's basically what has happened. And it makes our development lifecycle a lot easier. So what I'll do is I'll get away from the slideshow, if I can end it. And I'm going to bring over a browser. Can you guys see my browser? Joe or Patrick, can you see it?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I've sent you a link. The link in your last mail, when you click on it, allows you to create a Salesforce developer org for free, okay? But the difference between that and the regular links is that it comes built in with a Lightning process builder applied to it, okay? Which I'll show to you at the end of this. But it already has Lightning components enabled. But if you have an old Salesforce org and would enable Lightning components, you go under Develop in the Setup menu, click on Lightning components, and simply just tick that on, and it makes Lightning components available. Okay, so now I can create a Lightning component app, as it were. So I'm going to take you through in the next 25 minutes creating one, and you guys can do this yourselves in your own time. So this is the other link I sent you. This is a full tutorial in terms of what we're going to create. So here is the screen we're going to make. This is a screen we're going to surface inside Salesforce 1. It's got a search bar on the top and a list of contacts below, and we can search for contacts in the search box. All right, so a pretty simple app, but this is going to be made up of 3 different components. The overall purple container, we're going to make one component. We're going to make that quickly now and just surface it out in Salesforce 1 to show you what that looks like. And then we're going to make each of the 2 different components separately. So the search box and the contact list. And we're going to see how they link together. That's the idea behind it. So you just have to go and create your developer org, which is the next step, and enable Lightning components. But let's move on and talk about what we're going to create. So when we talk about Lightning components, what's happening is that the code for the front end is full of JavaScript and style sheeting and markup that is surfaced and processed on the browser. And a lot of the work in terms of re-rendering and all that, which is sometimes done with controllers in the background, is now done fully on the front end. So there's no real traffic going back and forward to the server. But the component does need to interact with the backend database. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to make an Apex class, and this is going to allow us just to get data from the server. That's it. That's all it does. There's no UI in this or anything at all. So let's make this class. So what I'll do is everything you do in Lightning Components has to be in Developer Console. So Developer Console, I just went to it using my name, and I clicked on Developer Console. And here's where I can create my code. So under File, New, I can create an Apex class. Now, I don't know if you 2 guys have ever looked too much at Apex. It's not really required for this. I'm going to sort of explain what it does, but it's not that big a deal. So I'm just going to copy this class out. And as we go through the code, I'll explain to you what the code is doing. And I'll just paste it in and save it. So now we have our controller. So that's saved. So our server side is kind of set. So now let's start making the front end. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to make the first overall container. It's going to be called a Lightning component. And a Lightning component can then be surfaced in a number of ways. So let's go into Developer Console and we'll create a new Lightning component. As you can see, because we've enabled Lightning on the developer end, we now have access to a few extra things we wouldn't normally have access to, and one of them is a component. So we give it a name called Quick Contacts, and we're just going to submit. And this will create our bundle for our components. Remember, a component is its own thing. It's got everything it needs to get rendered or used by another parent container. So it has on the right hand side the component area, which is what you see. This is the markup. Okay, this is like Visualforce, Joe, or a bit like HTML, Patrick, you can put into here. This is what gets rendered on the screen. It also has got some other things as well, which we'll go through now in a second. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to take out, this is the markup for our component. So we'll just paste this in. And this doesn't do very much. It puts in some HTML. It could be styling, everything that goes in here with HTML. And there's a few other tags we'll talk about in a few minutes. And it's also implementing an interface called Forced App Hostable. Now what this means is that this component can now be used in what is called a Lightning app, or can be surfaced inside Salesforce One. That's all that means. Okay, it's allowing us to do that. So if I just save that, so that's saved. And what we're going to do now is we're going to surface this very simple component in Salesforce One. And how we do that is we go into tabs. So to surface any page in Salesforce One, you have to make a tab. And if you're doing Visualforce in Salesforce One, it's a Visualforce tab. But if it's a Lightning component, we make a Lightning component tab. So let's make a new Lightning component tab. Just, what did they want us to call it? They wanted to call it Quick Contacts. It's fine. Sorry. Okay, we're just it's going to pick up Quick Contacts. We're going to call it Quick Contacts, which is what we'll see on the Salesforce One menu. I'll give it a style, whatever. And next. Okay, and we'll just take all the defaults here so all the different profiles can see it. And now it's created. So now we want to put it inside Salesforce One. So under the administrator, we see mobile administration. Under mobile navigation, this is where we can add available items, whatever tabs or we have, we can add them to Salesforce One. So we simply add it, and I'm just going to bump it up a bit so we see it a bit higher up in the menu. I'm going to save it. Okay, so that's saved now. Just get rid of that. So to see this in Salesforce One on a browser, you don't have to get your mobile phone out. You just take off everything after salesforce.com/ and you put in 1/1.app. So one is actually a namespace inside Salesforce, and 1.app is a Lightning application that Salesforce One is built on. So this is Salesforce One in a browser. This is obviously should be in a mobile phone. If we tap on this, you can see this is our tab, Quick Contacts, and there's the piece of just the P tag we put in. So far, nothing amazing, but we are surfacing our overall container on Salesforce One. So that's the first part. So let's go back to our tutorial, and this brings you through what I've just shown you. And we'll go on and we'll start adding some meaningful stuff now to our application. So we're going to make a new Lightning component. The component we have here, this is going to just surface two other components. The first one will be the search bar, and the second one will be the contact list. So we're going to make the contact list first. So as we create the contact list, you'll see how these kind of get linked together. So I'll make a new Lightning component. We're going to call this one contact list. Submit it. Okay, so got our component ready. And this is the markup. So this is the front end markup we have for our component. So I'll just paste this across. Now, this is doing a few things. The first thing it's doing is it's got a handle on the controller we made at the start. So any of the methods in the controller we can use in here. And we can only use methods in the controller if they are annotated with this annotation Aura enabled, which means that we can now call find all or find by name in our JavaScript code. So that's the first thing. So we've got a handle on the controller. The second thing is we need to show a list of contacts. So we're declaring a variable up here called contacts, which is going to be of a list of, this is the standard object, Joe, contact. And we're also going to have a handler. This init handler is basically an onload event. That's really what it is. And we're going to call a JavaScript function called doInit. We'll have to write that in a second. And here is a basic UL that we're going to iterate. So this is a new kind of tag, an or iteration over our contacts, which is here. And we're going to display the name and the phone number. And it's going to be a link in here. That's pretty much all that's here. But we do need some JavaScript for this to work. So we're going to scroll down and we're going to just get the initial JavaScript. This is our doInit function here. I'm going to copy that out. And the JavaScript for this component, remember, everything is inside the same component. So it has got options on the right for component. This is markup. Controller is the JavaScript. So we can paste our JavaScript in here. We can have a few different functions here if we want to. We just have one function for the sake of this one. And do we have anything else? I think we've got some styling to go in here as well eventually. But we'll talk about that in a second. So here is our code. So if we save that, that should save. And the init here, if we ran this controller component now, what would actually happen is that it would fire off a method call. So this C dot, this is accessing the controller and it's calling find all. So find all was the method in our controller. All it was doing was bringing us back a list of contacts, in this case 50 contacts. And then this is where it gets a little bit unusual. Normally in JavaScript, you just call the method with a callback method, with a function at the end of it. In this case, what we're doing is action is a variable. This is the method we're going to call. And eventually we're going to fire it, but we set the callback as a property of the action we're firing. And this is our callback method. So as soon as we get information back, we're expecting back a list of contacts. We're going to set the v.contacts, which is the contact list in the component, to be whatever we get back. But this line here, this is a very important line. This is where Salesforce call the action. You don't call it immediately. Salesforce queue it. And the reason they do this is because there could be multiple components on the same page, all calling the same thing at the same time. And they don't want lots of different transactions going off to the server. So what they've done instead is they've queued the action with any other action that needs to go at the same time, thrown them all off at the same time, and we get back the information in the right place. So they've taken care of a lot of work for us. And this has been, if you like, improved. And if you have lots of small calls, it'll queue them all together. You can also specify a call to be what's called independent, which means it just goes by itself. So there's lots of different thought going into this in queuing action. This is quite powerful what they've done here. So we will save that. And if we go down here, we're going to change our overall container to include our component. So here's our quick contacts. Here's our contacts component. We're going to take this out. And we're going to paste in our component. So now, if we are correct, we open this up again. Just refresh it. You see now we have our list of contacts. Okay, so that's what our code, that's our component's gone off and gotten our contacts and displayed them. And the last thing they'd like us to do is make it look a bit better because it doesn't look very good. So we can add styling onto this. So I'm just going to copy out the styling. I'm going to put it into our style area of our component. So this component is not just going to have JavaScript and markup, it's going to have its own style we can put inside it. The helper area, by the way, is extra JavaScript you can put in that can be called between components. Okay. The documentation I'm going to talk about in a little while. It's very important. The other three I really haven't used yet, but they're improving these all the time. So we'll just concentrate on the first four just for this one. And we'll save this. Okay, so we've done that. And if we refresh Salesforce 1 again, we should get a bit of a nicer look and feel, which we do. It's a nice bar here, and it's just styled a bit better. But so that's our contact list. So that's fine. So let's go back to our tutorial. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go and create the second component, which is the search field. So the search field is going to go on top, and the list of components are at the bottom. So in order for the search field to work, we have to have the search field component created initially. So let's create that first. So we're going to make a Lightning component called search bar. You guys okay following along this? Am I going okay? All right.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Very much like X pages and the custom controls that you use.
Yeah, very similar. So we're just going to copy out this component for the search bar, and it's just got a field in it. There's nothing much more than that in this field. So if we paste this in and save it. Now, this is going to call a JavaScript function called search key change. So let's put that in for a second. Here's search key change here. I'll just describe to you what's going on because we have to make something else for this to work. So I'm just going to paste in JavaScript. Now, this search key change, what's happening here is we're trying to get a handle on something else. This is what's called a lightning event. Okay, so a lightning event is just a listener that you can fire and you can send it parameters. Okay, in this case, we're sending it the search key. So I can't really save this yet. I want to make the lightning event first. So let's just create it. It's a lightning event, and we're going to call it search key change. So let's paste it in. And lightning components don't look amazing. This is just all that's in it. So all this is, if you like, just a big event firing mechanism that in this case can be fired anywhere inside this application or inside the container, and it's got an attribute you set called search key. So that's the event. So far it doesn't look like very much. And in our controller, we're simply calling it. And you can see here's where we're getting a handle on the event we're going to call. We specify what we're going to search for, and this is the field you filled in your front end. So when you tap on this, whatever you're searching for will go in here. And here's where you fire the event. So I'm just going to save this. So now the search field, when I tap on it, an event is going to get fired. So that's okay, that's fine. But what does it mean? Well, we're going to give it a bit of a style first. So just give it a style. Again, they all have their own style. So I'm just giving the search field a style of its own. Save that. Okay, so the search field is going to fire an event. We want the list of contacts in the other component to react to that event and do something. Okay, so we're going to add another handler to our first component, the quick contacts component. So here's our contact list component, and we're going to add another handler in here, and it's waiting for that search key event. This is the lightning event. So the search bar and this component don't know about each other. They live completely separately. Okay, and when you fire the event on the search key, this is listening for it, and it's going to fire its own JavaScript when it receives the event. It'll also get the parameter that's passed through. So we have to add that JavaScript function to the JavaScript of the first component. So we have JavaScript in here for contact list. We separate them out with a comma. And here's our search key change. Let's just fix the indentation. And our search key change is going to pick up the parameter from the event, the search key. It's also then going to get the find by name. This is a method in the controller. So the controller code, if we just quickly go to it, you'll see what I mean. Find by name is expecting the search key parameter, and you're just going to do a query using the name as what you're looking for. So pretty straightforward. So if we go back to our JavaScript, that's what it's doing. It's setting the parameters in its action. That's giving it the parameter into the Apex method. It's setting the callback, so as soon as you get a response back from that Apex method, we're going to update vContacts with the new values, whatever matched. And again, we're in queuing the action. So very similar to one above. So I'm just going to save that. And I'm just going to save this. Okay. So when the two of them fire each other, we should be able to get it working. So let's add our search bar to our overall container. So here's our quick contacts. We're just going to add it in here. So C:C is the default namespace we get in Salesforce when we're developing on our own org. And if I refresh this, you'll see now I've got a search bar. and it's going to fire the event. So if I look for Rose, you'll see it's actually firing the event as you type in it because it was on key press. Now these two did not know about each other, but the lightning event is what binds them together. So you could, for example, have another Salesforce, another lightning component, using the search bar and having, let's say, a list of accounts or a list of opportunities. And as long as that list has its own controller to find opportunities or find accounts, it can just look for the same event, our search key change, and react the same way. So this search field is not something you've got to recode for every page. It's the same component, you're just dragging it in. It's as simple as that. So that's the beauty. I don't know if you guys follow that, but that's the beauty behind them, that you have different events that it listens for, and your two components here. I mean, you could whistle this out and put a different component in, and the same componentization is working. You guys follow it, yeah?
Yeah, looks fine.
All right, okay, all right. So now there's lots more examples of lightning components out there, and I'll try to find it for you, but I just want to log on to one more org here to see if I can get up and running. Because in this one I've done the same code, but I've added a lightning app. So let's see, lightning app builder. So this is the new lightning app builder. I'm just going to show you one I've made already. Let's see, lightning app builder. So I make a new one. This is the new lightning app builder where we can create things. So I'm going to create one called demo, make it one column. And the idea behind these is that any components you have, you can make them available for this builder to pull them in and make your own components. So for example, we have search bar here. I can just drag search bar on top, and then I have my contact list. And this is the same app as we just saw. Just drag it up here. That's the same app we just created. You can just drag and drop them. And as far as we're concerned, how we manage that is, if I go back to setup, there's another just quick annotation you got to put in. So this is a different org. I've just added a few things to this one. So file, open lightning resource. If I look for contact list, the component, selected. You see I've implemented another interface on the component that you wouldn't have seen called Flexi Page available for all page types. That means that this component is now available in our Lightning App Builder. So we can create different drag and drop features. So the idea behind developers is that we will create these components, and then any administrators can go in and drag and drop things and make pages. And this is how the setup menu is eventually going to go. That we're going to make, instead of using a new field, or Joe, you would have often made custom fields, and you've only got certain options for them. You'll be able to also add to, let's say, a page layout or whatever, a component that we will create and drag and drop them. And in fact, they want you to be able to sell these components on the App Exchange when you create them. So it's a new dynamic developing on Salesforce. And just something I just wanted to raise with you guys today.
Cool.
Is that okay? Well, I'll probably do another session on Lightning Connect. I don't know if you've tried that yet, but certainly Lightning Connect is something I'd like you guys to see, because I've been asking Pavel and I might actually have Patrick about possibly making an OData connector of our own to Classic Domino, which we can do. He had a look at it at Christmas time. I never really followed up on it, but if we want people to continue to use Domino, if they want to go to the cloud, let's say in something like Salesforce, they can do both. They could surface Domino data out, and I'll probably organize another webinar in the next week or two to bring you through that.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good.
All right. Okay, guys. Well, sure, I'll stop this recording.